Welcome to her comeback, Courageously You. 7 simple frameworks to create the life you love. Officially launches June 25th. It will be available for purchase on Amazon. And I could not be more excited to finally get this book into your hands. So settle in, listen to the talk. It might just be the most important one you sit with all week. Here we go. Good day, everyone. Welcome to her comeback. I'm your host, Michelle Thompson, and I am happy to have joining me today, Robin Kencel. Robin, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Michelle. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You are a certified spiritual director, a longtime business leader, and you're the voice behind Substack Aging with Purpose. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I think I would call myself a professional smorgasbord because some people go long and deep into one area. I have a few tentacles. In my professional life, I have an MBA and I have had 6 careers. And probably my longest was in real estate. And you really learn a lot in real estate because you're dealing with many personalities. You've got negotiating, marketing, complex issues, lots of emotions. Many times you've probably heard that we're part therapist, we're part business person. You can learn a lot about life in real estate. That's my
That
professional life. I am a 7-time pro-am ballroom champion in the United States. And
wow.
I am proud to say that I'm going to be 68 in 2 weeks. And
It's
after 24 years in ballroom, I think I'm dancing better than ever. And I just love it. And I don't compete for anybody else but for me and to try to bring joy and something to the audience.
that's
So
amazing.
that's
You. I
uh,
love that. That's awesome.
yeah, I'm a writer. And I have an initiative, Aging with Purpose, which really came out of a very strange place, but makes sense. 2 years ago, I had a couple of clients in real estate and they were preparing for Miss USA and Miss America. And I thought, ooh, that could be another opportunity to push myself for performance and to help my ballroom dance. And so I ended up finding out what was available for women over 60. And there's a aspect of Miss America called Ms. Senior America. Long story short, I ended up winning for Connecticut, about to compete nationally when I broke my foot at the United States Dance Championships. And
Oh,
Connecticut,
no.
that brought me a whole nother direction, which we can talk about. But the great thing is, Connecticut wanted me to compete in 2025. So I did do that last October, and I ended up third runner up in the nation. The best part of that pageant is you are judged in part on your philosophy of life. So you have 35 seconds to deliver your entire philosophy of life. I am sure I spent 350 hours to get my 35
Oh,
seconds. And even
sometimes.
though I was a philosophy major in college and I spent a lot of time in deep thinking as a spiritual director, getting it down in 35 seconds is a bit of a challenge. But it also was my favorite part. And it got me starting to ask other people what their philosophies of life were. And that led to this initiative, Aging with Purpose, which is really about talking to folks over 50 and challenging them to think about their deeper purpose of life. Why are you here? What is it all about? And then, along with that, looking at the different core pillars of aging, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's always mind, body, and spirit. So that's a little bit about me, and we can go in any direction you'd like.
Wow, wonderful. Tell me a little bit more about your title or your role as a spiritual director. What does that mean exactly?
A spiritual director is not a therapist. It is not Bible study. What a spiritual director is trained in is how to accompany you who want to get closer to God, want to have a deeper relationship with God on a personal level. And so I have been trained to really be a listener. It is not about my theology at all. It is not about my walk with God. I am coming alongside you. And we always say there's 3 people in the room, you, me, and the Holy Spirit. And as you're talking about what you've been noticing in your life, in terms of where God might be showing up, but you may not even bring up God's name. You'll just talk and we will be inviting the spirit, and I'll just keep giving you back something I have heard. And I have to say, Michelle, I have myself been in spiritual direction for almost 40 years. And I have to say that this walk, this meeting once a month, this sort of thinking about and getting ready for the next month, what's happening in my life, how does God show up in my world, has really helped me in a very personal way in my own relationship. Almost 90% of people over 50 believe in God, but to the extent and what his image is, it varies, of course. People have always said this is really the guts of life once they get into it.
I love that. And one thing I loved about the work you do is this spiritual direction. I have an upcoming book coming out, Courageously You, 7 Simple Frameworks to Create the Life You Love. And one of my chapters is about spirituality. And it almost didn't happen. I literally had done a book outline and done all of my work, and spirituality wasn't in there. But I had a talk with a coach when I was putting all this together, and he asked me, Michelle, is spirituality important to you? And I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely. You might want to have it in your book. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you're right. So I was really just drawn to that spiritual component. And I have had certainly an evolution from childhood beliefs with religion and then just where I am today and my own higher power and the God of my understanding. So I appreciate your work there.
And I'm going to just respond to something you said there, because in spiritual direction, the first question we typically will ask is, what is your image of God? Because that starting point really sets everything else up. And for some people, that image of God is very related to the adult figures in their early years. And
Yes.
so if you had a very loving father, that might be translated into your image of God a certain way. If you had a stronger father or some negative experiences, that might translate. And what we do in spiritual direction is, you could, as my own spiritual director, a Jesuit priest said, you can call him Mickey Mouse for all you want. It doesn't really matter what the name is. If a male pronoun is going to impact somebody, we don't need to use that. It's really, as you said, the divine, the higher power. What is it that is bigger than you, that if you say, why was I made? Why am I here in 2026? What am I made for? That's the kind of questions that Aging with Purpose looks at and that we do in spiritual direction.
Why do you think people in midlife may seek this out? What have you seen in your work?
What I have seen in my own directees and amongst my age group is a lot of things change in the 50s to 60s, right? All of a sudden, your roles change. It could be you're going to be working less or not at all. Kids are now out of the house. You may have some personal losses in your own direct family, in a larger group. There's a lot of things that fundamentally change. And all of a sudden, your resume, I say, the thing that you define yourself, when you're at a cocktail party and someone says, what do you do? Who are you? What do you do? You start saying your job. You might talk about your kids, if you have a partner or a spouse, and your hobbies. You define yourself by your activities or your roles.
That's
But,
true.
right? And when
Yes.
some of them start dropping away, that throws everything else up in the air. And I think either people start wanting to find the rock they can crawl under, or they start saying, wait a second, there's got to be more to life. And
Mhm.
I want to figure out what it is. I just don't want
Yes.
to get through the next chapters. I really want to go out comfortable. And I'm also hospice trained. And
Right.
I've been doing a fair amount of hospice work recently. And what I will say is, those people who are in their last period of time and about to pass on, their belief system and how satisfied they are with how they lived their life, not even their whole life, but towards the end, really seems to impact how they're approaching leaving the earth. And I
Oh,
think about this woman that I only really knew for 8 weeks before she passed. She was an international journalist, and she was really headed for something huge. She was on Fleet Street. She interviewed everyone from Paul McCartney to Queen Elizabeth to Audrey Hepburn. And at
nice.
35, Marilyn contracted. And in a very
Mhm.
short period of time, she landed in a wheelchair. She was all about research always. And bee venom therapy kept her alive for the next 40 years. She just passed away recently after this long battle, but she was vibrant right up to the end. She did not let her illness define her. She just kept working around it. It's like a maze. You hit one wall, you go to the next wall. So no matter what your circumstance is, you can find something. And I think going back to your question, why do you think this comes up for people? Because things change, even illness, like I just mentioned. And they have to deal with things they haven't had to deal with before. And it's hard.
And what do you think the biggest lie is that women tell themselves that kind of keep them stuck where they are in that their former life? Even when they sense maybe they're being called towards something else, there's just this resistance. What do you see there?
Michelle, I talk about this a lot and I talk about it everywhere. And I'll tell you something. If you want to hear answers to questions like this, ask like the hairdresser doing your hair, because women get in the chair or the nail salon and they really let go, right? And
Mhm.
what I
They
would
do.
say that I either hear directly or I hear via secondary sources is they think they are too old. The biggest lie they tell themselves is, I can't do it. I'm too old. And I have this to say to that. The only thing you might be too old for is wearing skirts that are mini skirts. Maybe that's not a good choice over 60. But
Yeah.
anything else, look, take my dancing. Am I doing exactly what I was doing 25 years ago? No, I have 2 replaced hips, just came back from a broken foot. I have changed the style. I do a lot more warm up than I ever did. I modify. And I think that's my message. If you're telling yourself the lie, I'm too old, maybe you could change it to, okay, that's a fear. I might look foolish. I might not be able to do it. Instead, change it to, let me just give this a try. And then try it with the body you have, the circumstances around you, because there's always a workaround. I think you just need to be smart about it.
So, what would you say for someone who has been so focused on doing, whether it was building a career, raising their children, managing a household? How do you begin the actual practice of listening to your inner life again? Where do you start?
It's so simple, Michelle, that I think some of your listeners and viewers might laugh, but you cannot listen, you cannot learn unless you are quiet. So the first thing that would be helpful, and I talk about this a lot with my directees, is learning how to sit in stillness. And it's not saying a mantra. We are not talking about TM or meditation. In the Christian world, there is a practice called centering prayer. I do it. All you have to do is show up. The hardest part is committing a bit of time. And look, I don't like to sit still. I'm not doing centering prayer or this quieting for 30 minutes or an hour. I'm just making sure that when the day starts and after I say my first small group of prayers, I am having a seated, quiet time where I'm basically doing nothing. This is the beauty of it. All you have to do is show up in your seat, and whatever higher power you believe in, he's going to do the work or she's going to do the work. And I am here to tell you, because 40 years have shown me, and listening to my directees come back, they say, you know what? I don't know how it happened, but this changed in my heart, or I felt this, or that is the first thing to do. Once things fall apart or fall away and you have time, do nothing. Just start and sit. And then once you start and sit, okay, it's fine. Then I think you could say, what do I really value? And that goes into, what is my deeper purpose? So what is the one thing in the center of everything that all your other decisions need to work around? Now, this could be your values, and it's not the values that you write down quickly. It's the values that you're living. And one thing I do to myself too is say, all right, I'm just going to look at my calendar the last week and let me see how I spent my time. And let me see if how I spent my time is matching up with what I value and what I say is my deepest purpose. And that could be a real eye opener.
I have just a quick follow up to sitting in quiet. Now, when you start sitting in quiet, do you focus on breathing? Because I've heard people say, and the practice that I was taught, kind of focus on your breath. Is that what you encourage, or is there what do you focus on when you're quiet?
Every person is so different, and every technique is going to resonate with a different person. I would suggest you look at a few different techniques and you try them. It's just if you're trying a new sport, try a few different teachers, see who you connect with. So, and it might vary. There's sometimes that I really do breath work because I find that it just gets my whole nervous system to calm down. And if I'm in a very busy week, doing breath work, which by the way, you can even do in the car, like you could do it anywhere, is a good way to start.
Yeah.
Or just showing up and being. Or for somebody else, it might be just taking reading is a cop out. I wouldn't say go ahead and do your reading work, but maybe a very small poem or something, just as and some people just can't sit, go take a walk in nature. Don't have your headphones on. Don't go where visually you are really distracted. So start where you have to know yourself a little. What really helps me settle down and what would I enjoy doing, and start there. And then try different things.
This episode is sponsored by author Patty Brown. And if you've been listening to her comeback for a while, you might remember her. Patty joined me on the show about 9 months ago in our first season, and she left quite an impression. Her book, The Quiet Voice, is a series of personal essays about struggling with addiction and finding a way out, not through force, but by learning to follow that inner quiet voice that we all have. You know the one, that gut instinct, that intuition that's always there trying to guide us if we choose to listen. This book is for anyone who has ever had to fight their way to the other side of something hard. It's a feel good story about overcoming, about gratitude, and about growing hope for what's still to come. Everyone can find something in it. The Quiet Voice is available now on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Apple Books. And if you have little ones in your life, Patty's got a second book. It's a children's book called Lola and the Sea Turtle, also on Amazon. Wonderful kids' book. Look her up. You'll be glad you did. Another question I'm thinking about, and I think many women think about at this stage of life, they start thinking about legacy differently. How does having a clearer sense of purpose change the way we think about what we want to leave behind?
So when we have a clearer sense of purpose, it drives what the legacy is. Because think about it. If you're somebody who actually, if you think your deepest purpose is to make as much money as possible, then your legacy is going to be focused on what am I doing with that money that's meaningful. But if your deeper purpose is, like my deeper purpose is very simple, to please God. And so my legacy is hopefully living my life in actions that will please God. And the legacy that I am leaving to my children and to people who I come in contact with is hopefully the demonstration of that. People are not going to remember what I say. Nobody listens after your first 5 words, anyways. They are only going to remember how you made them feel if you showed up, how you showed up.
Yeah. I immediately think of the Maya Angelou quote that talks about they'll forget what you say, maybe they'll forget what they
Yes.
do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. True.
And that's why the legacy, I think, is so important back to that, because if you go back and say, where's my legacy coming out of? Your legacy is coming out of hopefully what you believed in, not just how you lived your life.
Yes.
Hopefully how you're living your everyday life is connected to what you value and what you believe in.
Yeah. So something I know that you have talked about and mentioned are the pillars. So how can people figure out what their central pillar of belief is, and how do you use that pillar to shape what you want from life?
I'd always like to look at mind, body, spirit. And there's different ways of thinking about pillars, right? There's the physical self, and we could talk about what's the key pillar there, especially as you're getting older, the emotional and mental pillar, and then the relationship pillar. But around all that, to figure out what your core pillar is, I would go back to first saying, what is it? And I would take the old notebook. This is great. It's great to be doing this kind of, all right, what is most important to me in life that is going to get at what your values are. And if I could only do 3 things every week, what would that be? And what have I enjoyed the most in my life? Where have I found the most meaning in my life? What experiences with what people? If you start asking these kind of questions and then looking at what you've written, you're going to see what is my core pillar? What is more important than anything else? For some people, it will be family. And you might not even really know that because you just know, okay, I'm busy trying to help my kids, trying to help my aging parents. But is that something you have to do? Or is that something that you value that you're going to put more important than anything else? So I think you've got to do a little digging into your past, how you've lived your life, and then thinking about what is it now? What is it that I think is the most important thing that I want to make sure at the end of my life, I have people will look at me and say, that, that's what she was about.
When we talk about the difference between the life we built and the life we were made for, is that kind of what this is, closing the gap?
Yes, yes, I love that language. You're right. Because the life we built, sometimes, look, it is around necessity. We do have to earn a living. We may have obligations that we have to do. So building a life is not always up to us and it's not always under our control. But the beauty, I think, for many of us as we get older is we no longer have to be so focused on building the life because a lot of it's been built and either done or built. And so it's built. And so the life that we were made for does get into those deeper questions. Look, I love saying, what are the gifts that you have that are unique to you? Tell me every gift that you have. Doing a gift inventory is really fun because no one's ever sitting around, I think, in our life going, oh, that's a great gift you have. Oh, I love that gift of you. But if
Yes.
you do your own gift inventory, it starts pointing at how was I uniquely made and am I using my gifts? And I think this is one of the most fun things about going into this next chapter of life that we do have some more time than we did before. There might be some unusual circumstances, but in general, I think time is such a great thing.
You also note there's a difference between reinventing yourself and rediscovering yourself. Tell us about that distinction.
I'm not a big fan of the term reinvention because to me, just to me, it almost feels like something was broken or not right. So I had to be. So for me, I don't love that language. When you're looking at instead of reinvention, rediscovering or discovering for the first time or uncovering all
Mm,
this kind of more, again, taking away the things that covered up who you were first made to be, that to me is a discovery. It's not an invention.
I
It's
see.
discovering who we were. I having young grandchildren is really just such an eye opener because you have this ability to observe more than when you were in the fire and it was your kids. And what I really notice is how they are uniquely each made. And that discovery of how they put things together and how they see the world and how everything is awe, that is the discovery we'd like to get back to. Who was I before life kept telling me a teacher said something and a parent said something and a friend said something, and they kept covering up who I might have been? Who was I made to be?
Yes, I think that's great. This is something I've heard, and I'm sure you have too. Women over 50 describe feeling invisible. They feel less relevant, less seen. Is that real? And what do you think we do with that?
This is quite interesting because, of course, we live in a very visual culture. And I will never forget that I had a wonderful therapist for many years walk beside me to help with raising kids. I would come in with my yellow pad and questions. And we were talking about dance or something. And she looked at me once and she said, you're not going to have to worry about anything because when you hit 50, you'll be invisible. No one will look at you. No one will pay any attention to you. And that really struck me. And obviously, I think that unfortunately we have a culture that perhaps the older, the wiser is not as revered as some other cultures outside of our country. So I don't want to say there isn't a truth to that because I do see it. But what I would say is, why are you paying any attention to it? I don't pay any attention to it, to be honest, Michelle. I just live my life. I think if you believe in yourself, and if you have self confidence, does it really matter what someone else is saying about you? Or can you chart your own path over 50? Can you find the joy and the fun and I think that's important. You don't have to behave a certain way because you're a certain age. You don't have to have a certain hairstyle. You don't have to go into whatever you think that age should be. You can be yourself.
Yes. And I love the empowerment that you're talking about because we always have a choice. We don't have to hand our power over to them to be invisible or less seen or whatever all that stuff is. We have a choice and we can be true to ourselves and be the person that we're meant to be.
Now, I want to add to that. You could have viewers and listeners who are sitting there saying, fine for you. You seem to have been born with a lot of self confidence. I don't share that. What about them? And what I would say is, you know what? You can get that, and you can get that in some unlikely places. I mentioned a couple of years ago when I broke my foot, when I cleared out my contacts and had to think about what else I was going to do for 14 weeks. It didn't involve walking. And I decided to try my hand at acting because I liked it as a kid. And I'm in my second year of improvisational acting. Now,
You.
improvisational acting, I bring it up because you know what? It gives you a lot of confidence. There's no script. You got to get up and you got to just get a word from the audience and go. And I'm telling you, at first you feel like you're falling off a cliff and you don't know if there's a parachute. And after a while, it's like anything, you start getting a little better. So I'd say if you don't have confidence, if you are feeling like, wow, people are calling me something or I'm feeling something at 50, get out of your discomfort zone. You're not going to get in a comfort zone. Try something new that you think might help. Improv is one idea, but you'll give it a few minutes of thought and I bet you'll come up with something that you say, I want to get more confidence. Where can I go? What can I do? Maybe it's a speaking class. Maybe it's anything where you're just putting yourself a little out there.
Something, an activity you enjoy. I'm curious, and you said this at the beginning about your success with ballroom dancing. What drew you into that? How did that come into being?
As a child, I did have the type of mother that made you try everything, music, everything. And dance was just always my thing. And I think people always knew me as a dancer when I was at Georgetown University. I was a liturgical dancer, a disco dancer, a modern dancer. Embarrassingly, I every single day wore a light blue jogging suit over my dance clothes. And so, no surprise, when I went to my reunion one year, people asked if I still danced. And I was 45 at the time. And I thought, I need to find a kind of dance that works. And someone mentioned ballroom, and I got there, and they saw I did know the basics of not ballroom, but how to dance and movement. And I love to perform. I had many years where it was nerve wracking because you've got 8 judges judging you on a ballroom floor. I'd rather just perform. But
Yeah.
after a while, I was like, my new dance instructor says something I love so much, and you could apply it to anything. He says, you know who you are. Bring who you are. You know who you are. And for some reason, once he started saying that, talk about getting confidence, I was like, yeah, I do know who I am. And you might have the power of the pen and you're judging me, but I know who I am and I know what I want to put out. So that's how I ended up in ballroom. And many years it was nerve wracking, as I said.
Yeah.
But I just kept with it because I think there's something good about putting yourself in situations that challenge you, that are not
Yes.
100% comfortable, that just push your edges and help you grow.
Yes, that's 100% because it's through the challenge that you grow. That's exactly what I was thinking as you were saying it. It's like you're just growing and becoming better. What would you say is it everything we talked about today for the woman sitting out there that's at this crossroads and just really trying to figure out what's next? What would you tell that woman sitting there today?
I'll tell
Mhm.
you what, start with, I just love my list. What are the things that I can't get rid of that are my have tos? Because we all have them. Put down your have tos. And then put down the things. And again, think back. What did I love as a child? What is one thing that's been in the back of my mind? And this is where I like sitting in silence, because it's not necessarily thinking your way through it, just sitting there and it'll come to you. Put down
Mhm.
a few things. And I would say I love James Clear and Atomic Habits.
Yes,
His whole thing is about starting small. Do
yes.
one little thing, but just
Mhm.
keep showing up. So I would say look at your list of things that you might want, or pick one. And instead of doing the thing that's a time waster that's not going to help you grow, we each know whatever it is for ourselves. Take a
Mhm.
little bit of that out, figure out a way to do a little bit of the thing that's on your list. And every single day, whether you want to or not, do it, because you've got to just make it a commitment. And then it will become a part of your ethos. And that's what a habit is. A habit is when you can't not do it because it's so much a part of who you are.
Yes.
And think about how great that will feel at the end of the year, even if it's one little thing. Like this year, to be honest, I don't love to travel and I don't love like regimented, but I was called on to go on a pilgrimage to Lourdes, France. And it was a very intense trip and we took a lot of very sick people. And I did ask for a lot of help to just do this thing. And it was the one thing that I am so proud of this year, that I just felt this is going to help me grow. This is going to help me grow in the way it goes back to the core pillar, that I'm
Yes.
going to be growing my core pillar. So just pick one thing. That's
Mhm.
what I would say, and show up.
So, anyone listening, watching us out there that would like to get in touch with you and wants to work with you or more information, how can she do that?
Thank you. If you want to see my silly side and what being over 60 can be in just all sorts of funny ways, follow me on social media at Robin Kencel. That's super easy. We're just launching my Substack, and my writings are on my website, robinkencel.com, but they'll be on Substack, Aging with Purpose. And I think that's easiest.
Awesome. I have just really enjoyed our conversation, Robin. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight. And there's so many things that I feel like you and I are like, we're just on the same page. We are aligned on a lot. So I really appreciate that. It's
Oh,
always good to meet another kindred spirit.
I agree. Thank you so much for even doing this podcast for folks. It's so important.
Oh, thank you. And I wish you continued success in all that you do.
Appreciate that.
Right. I hope that something landed for you today because you were meant to hear it. Now, if that conversation stirred something in you, I just can't wait until you get your hands on Courageously You. We go deeper into frameworks with stories and reflection questions and tools to actually do the work, not just be inspired by it. Here's what I need you to do right now while it's fresh. Go to the link in the notes, her comeback, sign up for the updates, hercomebackpodcast.com. Again, that's hercomebackpodcast.com. You'll be the first to know when it drops and get all the details on how to grab your copy. And trust me, you don't want to miss launch day. Courageously You will be available on Amazon starting June 25th. Set a reminder, mark it on your calendar, and tell a friend who needs this information as much as you do. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for showing up here week after week. It's exactly the kind of courage this book is talking about. Keep coming back. Your comeback is happening. Until next time, I'm Michelle Thompson, and this is Her Comeback.